Welcome to South Windsor Library's First Chapter Friday. I'm Miss Becky, and today I'll be reading Nuts to You by Lynne Rae Perkins, published by Greenwillow Books. Author's note. One mild day in November, I took my lunch down to the Waterwheel Park. I had been scribbling away on a project, so it was mid-afternoon by the time I got there. As I sat down on the bench, a few kids wandered through the park on their way home from school. They stopped to drop sticks into the stream above the water wheel, then ran around to watch them fly off on the other side. I waved to Rose, who was walking someone's dog down the alley below the park. A couple of high school boys pulled up in a car and headed for the tennis court. Soon I heard the pock-pock of the tennis ball, interspersed with shouts of the score. Some birds were excited about the wild grapes hanging in thick clusters from their vines, which were supported by a different kind of bush that had tiny red berries that I would certainly not eat without finding out first what they were. They didn't look that tasty anyway, but they were pretty. Squirrels raced to and fro, the way squirrels do. I was watching the carefree squirrels when, all at once, one of them jumped onto the end of the bench where I was sitting and looked with interest at me, and then meaningfully at my sandwich. Quite calmly, he stepped closer. That's bold, I thought. A little too bold. I tore off a bit of my sandwich and was about to chuck it as far as I could, figuring he would take off after it, when he spoke. "Please don't throw it," he said. "Would you mind just setting it on the bench? I'm not as spry as I once was." While I was gathering my wits, he sniffed the air and spoke again. "It's peanut butter, isn't it?" I nodded. I didn't speak. I have not reached the point of talking to squirrels, I thought to myself. Not yet. But I did set the piece of sandwich down on the bench between us. The squirrel took it up and nibbled. He closed his eyes as if savoring the taste. "I love this stuff," he said. "I love the taste of it. And the chunks, I'm glad it's the chunky kind." "You speak," I said. "Human. English." "Are you sure you're not speaking squirrel?" he asked. Straight-faced, deadpan, and then he laughed. "Yes," he said, "yes, I do. I'm an old squirrel, and I have lived for many years in the vicinity of humans. We have shared homes. One picks things up. Habits, language." Then he took another nibble. "What I love most about peanut butter," he said, "is how it transports me to my youth. The first taste always takes me back to the very first time I had it. For an instant, I am young again, and strong, and probably foolish." He bit, he chewed and swallowed. "It was just after a great adventure," he said, "that made it taste even better. It always does, don't you find?" "Oh, yes," I said, "always." I tried to think whether I had ever had a great adventure. I decided that I had. It's all in how you look at it. I took a bite of my sandwich and tore off another piece for the squirrel. Still working on the first bit, he nodded his thanks. "It was just this time of year, too," he said. He seemed to want to talk about it. I glanced around the park. Everyone had gone. No kids, no dogs or dog walkers, no high school boys playing tennis, no birds, no squirrels, except for this one. "So what happened?" I asked. "What was your great adventure?" He cleared his throat. "Amid the thick and intertwining boughs, among the limbs, branches, and leafy twigs of our grove," he began, "the bus paths ran." He said this as if he had said it many times before. He spoke formally, almost as if he were reciting a poem. "Actually," he said then in his normal voice, "I think I'll start with the wolf this time." The fact that I am referring to his normal voice when talking about a squirrel should tell you something. But what can I say? It happened. Chapter 1. The Squirrel Who Cried Wolf. It's true there was a wolf, or wolves. There may have been more than one. Maybe they were actually coyotes, who knows? They all look pretty much the same to a squirrel. Huge, shaggy, terrible yellow eyes, red slobbering mouth with big sharp pointy teeth. And it's true that if you are a squirrel on the ground, and a wolf, or a coyote, strolls into the neighborhood, running up a tree is the best plan. No one's going to argue with that. The problem was the squirrel called Jip. He kept yelling, "Wolf!" just to see everyone run. He had been doing it all day. He thought it was funny. And a little bit, it made him feel important, because most of the time, no one listened or paid any attention to him. But when he shouted, "Wolf!" up the tree, they all went, except for Jed. Jip looked at him, annoyed. "Wolf!" he shouted. Again. But Jed stayed put. He was busy. He had nuts to bury. Winter was coming. The first frost was long gone, and the air felt cooler with each passing day. Leaves were falling into crispy yellow piles on the ground. Any day now there would be snow. Just a little at first, then mountains of it. "Wolf, wolf, wolf," said Jed irritably. "Is that the only word he knows?" Jed did look around to see if there was a wolf, because he was irritated, but you never know. Sure enough, no wolf in sight. He shook his head and went back to his work, muttering and nattering. "Wolf!" shrieked Jip. "Wolf, wolf, wolf," muttered Jed. "There is no wolf." And then the foolish Jip saw something. Not a wolf, but something very real. Something dangerous. In his fright, he blurted out the first word that popped into his head. The one he had been saying all day. "Wolf!" Muttering and digging, Jed did not notice until the very last instant how the air above him had gone suddenly still and silent. "Oh," he said in surprise, as a set of talons tightened around him and lifted him up, 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 past every whirl of branches, up above the treetops, into the vast reaches of the sky. Cold air rushed over his face, forced his eyes to squeeze shut. Every muscle in his body tensed up. He may have peed a little bit. Who wouldn't? All four of his paws curled and clenched. His mind raced. A mighty wave of fear rolled in and filled him up. And somehow, even through the roaring of the fear and the rushing of the air, he could hear a small voice inside him saying, "This is it, then." Jip watched the fearsome bird swoop down, snatch his cousin Jed, and swoop back up. "Hawk," he said, correcting himself. "I should have cried hawk." So he did it now. "Hawk!" he cried. "Hawk! Hawk!"